I gave my daughter a house as a wedding gift, believing, no, trusting, that her marriage would be something joyful, something elegant, something worthy of celebration. Everything a mother could ever hope for. But before the ceremony even took place, that so-called son-in-law showed up, dragging behind him his entire family, his parents, his brother, his sister-in-law, all of them, marching in like they owned the place. The very first thing out of their mouths, "We'll be taking the master bedroom," and she, a careless wave toward my daughter, "can handle all the chores." Chores. Not partnership. Not a marriage. As if she were nothing but a live-in maid. They thought they had it all figured out. They got smug far too quickly, and realized, far too late, that my daughter was nobody's stepping stone. Not now. Not ever. And as they sat there gloating, thinking they'd won, I made sure every last one of them shut their mouths permanently. My daughter Emily had met Jason Carter a few years ago. He seemed decent enough at first glance. Polite, attentive, respectful toward Emily, the kind of man any parent might cautiously approve of, if not enthusiastically. But his family, oh, his family was another story entirely. No house, no car, not a dime toward the wedding. His parents lived in some remote farm town, scraping by as field hands. His brother Derek and Derek's wife Lauren barely held together an existence with random gig jobs in the city. David and I had our doubts from the very beginning, but Emily was in love deeply, stubbornly, hopelessly in love. She pleaded, she coaxed, she reasoned until, eventually, we gave in. We told ourselves, if we couldn't stop her from marrying him, at least we could ensure she wouldn't struggle afterward. So we gifted her a house, a beautiful, fully renovated standalone home, tucked away in a quiet suburb of Seattle. Every detail had been carefully chosen. David had personally overseen the entire renovation, pouring hundreds of thousands into custom finishes, designer fixtures, and the very best contractors. The day the renovations were completed, David was practically buzzing with excitement. "Come on," he grinned, practically dragging me by the wrist. "You have to see it. It's perfect." But before we even set foot inside, a shrill, unmistakable voice sliced through the air. "My God, what is this? Is this neighborhood a prison? Every house has its doors shut. What kind of neighbors are these? How's anyone supposed to teach if everyone locks themselves away?" I didn't need to see her to know. Jason's mother, Mrs. Carter. "Jason," she bellowed, "go tell the neighbors to quit shutting people out. What's the point of living here if no one's friendly? And this front gate? What is this? Looks like a damn fortress. Bars, locks, like we're guarding a bank or something. What happens when relatives come to visit? Are they supposed to stand out here like beggars?" "Jason, get someone to tear this ugly thing down." A low heat began simmering in my chest. Jason had brought nothing to this marriage. No car, no home, not even an engagement ring. Emily's sweet, selfless Emily had quietly bought one herself just to keep us from worrying. She told us it was from him. Of course we found out later, but we let it slide. We told ourselves, maybe they love each other, maybe that's what matters most. But the Carters' reaction when they found out about the ring, not gratitude, not embarrassment. No, they scoffed, called Emily wasteful, said a ring was just a formality. Why throw money away on something useless? They sneered. And now, standing on the threshold of this house, our house, listening to that woman pick it apart like she was reviewing some rundown motel, my patience began to fracture. Emily, ever the peacemaker, tried her best to keep things civil. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, there's a wonderful community center nearby," she offered gently. "They have game nights, socials, lots of ways to meet people." Mrs. Carter wrinkled her nose. "Game nights? Please, you think we haven't played cards before?" And just like that, without a single greeting or polite acknowledgement, Jason's parents wandered off into the house, peeking into rooms, inspecting furniture, running their fingers over the countertops, as if evaluating whether the granite was to their liking. Not a glance in our direction. Emily stood frozen, caught between shock and disbelief. David, who was usually the calm one between us, looked completely blindsided. Sensing the tension, Jason shuffled over, whispering like a scolded child. Mr. Dawson, Mrs. Dawson, I know my parents can be, lively, but they really do love Emily. I promise. Before I could respond, a loud, booming voice echoed from the master bedroom. Now this is a damn fine room, Mr. Carter. For one foolish second, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally appreciating what we had done for Emily. I stepped into the bedroom, and my breath caught. There was Mrs. Carter sprawled out on the brand new king-sized bed, shoes still on, legs crossed like she was already the queen of the castle. Her filthy sneakers were grinding dirt into the crisp white duvet, and next to her Mr. Carter was, God, I couldn't believe it, lighting a cigarette in my daughter's brand new, freshly renovated home. Before I could get a word out, he casually pressed the burning tip against the solid oak nightstand to snuff it out. A dark, charred mark appeared instantly on the polished surface. David's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. Emily's face flushed, her eyes flicking desperately to Jason, pleading silently for him to do something. Anything. But Jason only lowered his head, shoulders sagging. He looked like a scolded dog. No protest, no apology. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Miss Carter stretched his arms over his head, let out a satisfied sigh and declared, "Yep, this one's perfect. We'll take it." For a moment I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe the blood rushing in my ears had distorted his words. But no, they had just waltzed into my daughter's home, took one look around and decided. The master bedroom was theirs. David. Emily and I stood frozen, utterly stunned. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't a joke that had gone too far. No, this was a full-on invasion. A shameless, deliberate claim of ownership over something that wasn't theirs. Mr. Carter ambled out of the master bedroom, like he hadn't just desecrated the very foundation of basic decency. His eyes scanned the hallway before landing on one of the smaller guest rooms. He nodded approvingly as if inspecting a rental property. "This one's perfect for our grandson," he announced without a hint of irony. Then, turning to Jason, he added, "Call your brother, tell him to cancel his lease. He and Lauren should move in here right away." I felt my pulse spike. Surely I had misheard. But no, he wasn't done. "We'll put the house in Derek's name," he continued, clapping his hands together like some real estate mogul concluding a deal. "That way Mason has a stable home when he starts school here." My nails bit into my palms. "And as for you and Emily," Mr. Carter added, glancing lazily at Jason, "you can come back and live here once you have kids. Until then, no rush." The breath left my lungs. I physically staggered back a step, pressing a hand to my chest as though that would somehow steady the sudden surge of fury. I opened my mouth to speak, to scream. Maybe. But before a single word could escape, David's hand closed gently but firmly around my wrist. He gave a small shake of his head. "Let Emily handle it," his eyes said. "She needs to." And as much as every fiber of my being wanted to unleash a verbal storm that would shake the foundations of this house, I knew he was right. If Emily couldn't set boundaries now, how would she ever survive a lifetime tethered to this family? My gaze shifted to Jason, the boy who had once seemed so polite, so respectful. He stood there, spine curled inward, head bowed, lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Not a word, not even a whisper of protest. Emily, however, had reached her limit. Her voice, when it came, was icy, sharper than I had ever heard it. "This house," she said slowly, "was a gift from my parents. It's not a boarding house for your entire family. Don't you think you're crossing a line?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mr. Carter's expression darkened instantly. His nostrils flared, a puff of cigarette smoke curling from them like some kind of fire-breathing dragon. His voice sharpened into something cruel and condescending. His lip curled. "You really think this belongs to you?" He took a step forward, voice rising. "This is my son's home, which means it's our home. And you have the nerve to talk back to your future father-in-law before you're even married?" He scanned the room, then scoffed. "What? You planning to throw us out once you've got a ring on your finger?" My fingers twitched. I could feel the tremor building, fighting against every ounce of restraint I had left. Mrs. Carter chose that moment to jump in, her shrill voice cutting through the air like broken glass. I get it. I do. This is your wedding house. But honestly, isn't it a little ridiculous for just two people to live in this whole mansion? She jabbed her finger toward the smaller bedroom. What's the big deal if Mason stays here? You don't even have kids yet, letting a perfectly good room sit empty. It's just selfish. And as if the sheer audacity wasn't enough, she folded her arms and added with a smug little smirk, "We're not trying to take advantage of you, sweetie. We just don't want you struggling alone. We came here to help, to support you. You should be grateful." Emily's hands trembled at her sides, her breath coming faster now. But Mrs. Carter wasn't finished. "Besides," she went on, her eyes narrowing into slits, "you're about to be my daughter-in-law. It's only right you take care of us. Cooking, cleaning, making sure we're comfortable. Don't go thinking you can slack off just because you're the bride." I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. David's shoulders rose, his whole posture locked like a spring ready to snap. And then came the final blow. Miss Carter looked Emily up and down, eyes filled with judgment. "Honestly, looking at you, I can tell you're not much of a housekeeper. Why don't you save yourself the trouble and have your father hire a maid to take care of us instead?" There was a heartbeat of silence, one long excruciating pause where even the air seemed to stop moving. And then, Emily snapped. "If you want a house in the city," she said, her voice steel wrapped in velvet, "pay for it yourselves. Stop expecting my parents to hand you everything." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Mrs. Carter's face twisted in pure, unfiltered rage. "Jason, are you hearing this? This is the woman you're about to marry? Talking like we're some kind of beggar? Since when did her family's money become more important than ours?" Jason's face went pale. His voice wavered. "Emily, you can't say things like that. Apologize. Apologize to my parents." Emily's gaze turned on him. Sharper, colder. "Jason, if you actually believe that, then take your parents and get out of my house. My parents bought this for me, not for you, not for them." His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "Emily, come on. You always throw these little tantrums, and I always let it go. But this is going too far. Can't you show my parents a little respect?" She yanked her arm away like his touch burned her. "Don't touch me." Mrs. Carter let out a bitter, mirthless laugh. "You should be grateful to be marrying a man like Jason. You think you're too good for us? Look at yourself. Spoiled, selfish, completely lacking in respect. Frankly, I don't think you're even good enough for my son." She turned to Jason, her face burning with fury. "You see now? She looks down on us, just like all these city folks do." Emily didn't blink, didn't flinch. Her voice was flat, solid. "We're not even married yet, and you're already trying to claim what isn't yours. That's not family. That's greed." Jason wiped his forehead, his face strained, jaw tight. "Emily, that was way out of line. You need to apologize." And then, as though things couldn't possibly spiral any further, Mr. Carter stepped forward. A long drag from his cigarette filled the space between us with swirling smoke. His eyes locked on David and me, narrowing with contempt. His voice dipped, curling with mockery. "David," he drawled, as though tasting the name like something bitter, "how exactly did you raise your daughter? Because I'm seeing a serious lack of discipline here. No respect, no humility. All this my house nonsense." Exhausted, he took another pull from the cigarette, exhaled lazily. "You wouldn't be looking down on us country folk now, would you?" His eyes sharpened. Jason didn't turn out this polite and hard-working on his own. He had to be disciplined, tough love, real parent. That's how he learned humility, learned to respect his elders. His lips curved into a sneer. "Once your daughter marries into our family, she'll learn her place. Jason will teach her how to behave. You have my word on that." Jason stood frozen. He didn't say a word. He didn't object. He didn't deny it. And then, he nodded. A small, almost imperceptible dip of his head. "But I saw it. Oh, I saw it. We all did. Something in Emily's eyes shifted. Something that had been trembling, hesitant, unsure, snapped clean in half. David stared at the Carters, as if witnessing something so grotesque, it defied logic. In all his years, through every challenge we had faced together, he had never encountered anything this brazen, this shameless. I could feel the pressure building in my own chest, the heat that burned up my neck, until it exploded. Loud, sharp, unstoppable. How we raised our daughter, I hissed, stepping forward, is none of your damn business. And you, I jabbed a finger at Mr. Carter, you have the audacity to lecture us. I was trembling now, not from fear, but from sheer rage. You brought nothing to this marriage. No house, no car, not a cent toward the wedding. You have the nerve to stand here, in a house we bought, and act like it belongs to you. My gaze snapped to Jason, my voice rising. And you? What exactly do you bring to the table besides blind obedience to these parasites? You rely on us for everything. Everything. So tell me, where do you get the right to make demands? For a second, just 1 second, the Carters stood frozen, as if no one in their miserable lives had ever dared to speak to them this way. Then, Mr. Carter's face twisted, his lip curled, his teeth bared. You done talking? He snapped. So what if we don't have money? Your daughter wasn't exactly hard to win over, was she? She practically threw herself at Jason. The words hit the air like a slap. His tone sharpened, crueler. You think we don't know why? She's past her prime. If she were really worth anything, you wouldn't have to bribe a man to marry her with a house and gift. Let's be honest. You knew she had no better options. Emily flinched. Her hands curled into fists. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. I could see it. The sting, the fury, the disbelief, all swirling together behind her eyes. But beneath all of it, something colder was forming. Something stronger. She took a deep, shaking breath. Then her voice sliced through the room, calm, steady, unshakable. Mom, Dad. She turned, her gaze meeting ours with a clarity that stole the air from my lungs. I'm not marrying him. David and I both snapped our heads toward her, stunned. I mean it. She looked at Jason, then back at us. You're right. We come from completely different worlds, and this was never going to work. There was no anger in her voice, no desperation, just certainty. A brutal, crystalline certainty. And deep down I knew this wasn't a decision born in the heat of the moment. No, Emily had seen the truth, the real truth, not the illusion of love she'd clung to for too long. We had seen it too, how things between them had been unraveling for months. But this was the final straw. Mrs. Carter wasn't ready to let it end. She let out a bitter laugh, sharp and ugly. Oh, please. Don't act like you're the victim. Even if you call off the wedding, my son would never take you back. Emily didn't even blink. She turned to Jason, her voice like ice. Take your parents and leave. We're done. Jason's face contorted. Panic bloomed instantly. His hand shot out, desperate. Emily, no. Come on, don't do this. Don't be so stubborn. She yanked her arm away as if his very touch scorched her skin. Don't touch me. Mr. Carter let out a cruel, derisive laugh. Look at you, Jason. Pathetic. She's not even your wife yet, and you can't control her. If you let this slide, she'll walk all over you for the rest of your life. His voice dropped into a sneer. Are you even a man? And that was the moment the dam finally broke. Glass shattered. The crash echoed through the house. I didn't even realize until I looked down that I'd grabbed a tumbler from the coffee table and hurled it against the wall. Shards glittered against the floor like scattered diamonds. And then David moved. A roar tore from his chest. A sound so raw, so guttural, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. His fist shot forward, slamming square into Mr. Carter's jaw. The impact sent him sprawling backward. He crashed against the wall before collapsing onto the floor, gasping, clutching at his face. A bruise was already blooming dark and angry across his cheek. Mrs. Carter shrieked, "You're crazy. That's assault." David stood over him, his voice low, deadly. Say another word and you won't make it out of this house. Jason stood paralyzed, white as a ghost, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I stepped forward, closing the distance, and for the first time Jason looked truly afraid. His voice trembled. I only said that because she was disrespecting my parents. If she just apologizes, maybe we can forget all this. Before he could finish, David's palm cracked across Jason's face. The sound rang out sharp, brutal, final. Jason stumbled back, crashing onto the floor. A bright red handprint bloomed across his cheek. David's eyes burned. That was for Emily, for every word you let them say about her. Jason scrambled backward, breath coming in short. Panicked. Gasped. His hands flailed behind him, as though searching for something, anything to hold on to. But there was nothing left. Mr. Carter, still dazed, groaned and pushed himself halfway upright, his palm gingerly pressing against his bruised jaw. His face was ashen, his bravado shattered, but his mouth still hadn't learned. You lay another hand on me, he rasped, voice shaky but venomous. I swear I'll call the cops. You'll go to jail for this. David stepped forward with the weight of a storm, his hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. You think I care? His voice was low, sharp as a blade. Do it. Go ahead. But before they get here, I promise you'll regret ever stepping foot in this house. Without warning, David grabbed Mr. Carter by the collar. His grip was iron, lifting him clean off the floor as though he weighed nothing more than a sack of potatoes. Mr. Carter's legs kicked wildly, his battered shoes tumbling off in the struggle. Let me go, you psycho. Mr. Carter squawked, flailing helplessly. David leaned in, his voice dropping to a razor's edge. I see you now, for what you really are. And let me make this crystal clear. Even if Emily wanted to marry into your family, I would never allow it. Mr. Carter whimpered. His earlier arrogance, his smug superiority, all of it had evaporated like mist under the sun. My daughter, David continued, tightening his grip, is smart. She's beautiful. She's capable. She doesn't need your son. She is far too good for him. Far too good for any of you. David's voice dropped even lower. Dangerous now. Lethal. You couldn't afford a wedding. You couldn't buy them a house. And the moment you walked in here, you spat on everything we gave them. You tracked dirt onto our floors, smoked in our rooms, burned our furniture, and acted like we owed you something. Then, with a final shove, he threw Mr. Carter backward. His body hit the floor like a sack of trash, crumpling in a pitiful heap. We're not giving you a damn thing, David snarled. Now, get out of my house. Mr. Carter scrambled to his feet, nodding furiously, his hands shaking. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. David bent down, picked up one of Mr. Carter's scuffed, ugly shoes and flung it toward him. Pick it up and go. Mr. Carter nearly tripped over himself as he fumbled to grab the shoe. His hands shook so badly he dropped it twice before finally jamming it onto his foot. For a split second, the room was silent. No one breathed. Even the air seemed to wait, tense, charged. Then, Mrs. Carter, still frozen in stunned disbelief, suddenly lunged toward Jason, grabbing his arm with both hands. Come on, she snapped, her voice trembling between fury and fear. We're leaving. She dragged him toward the front door like a stubborn toddler, but of course, she couldn't resist one final parting shot. Turning back, her eyes narrowed into slits. You'll regret this. Jason could have any woman he wants. Girls would line up for him. Your daughter. She's going to end up alone. You'll see. I didn't even need to answer. I simply took a slow step forward, arms crossed, letting the weight of my silence do the talking. Mrs. Carter flinched. And then, like some tragic comedy, the moment the three of them reached the front steps, something or someone slipped. There was a sharp yelp, followed by the unmistakable sound of bodies tumbling down the stairs. Thud, thud, arms flailed. Legs tangled, shoes flew. The thudding crash echoed all the way into the driveway. David let out a sigh, shaking his head. Serves them right. I pressed my hand over my mouth not to stifle a gasp, but to stop myself from laughing. Even Emily, whose face had been pale with tension, let out a small, stunned exhale that sounded dangerously close to a chuckle. For a long moment, all we could hear was the groaning of the Carter family sprawled across the pavement. I hoped that would be the last of it. That once Emily had ended things with Jason, she would finally be free. Free from that family's poison. Free to move forward. I was wrong. I underestimated just how low they were willing to sink. That evening, Emily came home from work earlier than usual. Her steps were heavy, shoulders tense. She dropped her bag onto the hallway table with a loud sigh. I glanced up from the kitchen. "What's wrong?" Wordlessly, she pulled her phone from her purse and handed it to me. My brows furrowed as I scanned the screen. An email from Jason. Subject line: "Since we've broken up." I scrolled. My heart rate doubled. "It's only fair that you pay me back what you owe," the email began. David, who had been sipping coffee at the counter, leaned in. "Wait. What?" "Just check the attachment," Emily muttered. I opened it. A spreadsheet. A meticulously organized line-by-line itemized spreadsheet. Every single expense Jason had ever paid for Emily over the course of their relationship. Tuesday, Starbucks. 2 coffees, $11 NT. Say Valentine's Day. Flowers. $20 a. Uber ride last weekend. 14 Birthday dinner. $42.50. On and on it went. A grotesque parody of account, and at the bottom in bold font, as if he was submitting an invoice to a client, total $2,897. "I'll be generous, just send me $2,897, and we'll call it even." David blinked. "This is a joke, right?" My hands were trembling. Not with fear, with fury. I had half a mind to drive straight to wherever Jason was and throw that spreadsheet right in his smug, pitiful face. "Does he think we don't know?" My voice trembled. "For nearly every date, every dinner, you were the one pulling out your card. When did he ever treat you to anything?" "One. And even that was a fast food joint." David's nostrils flared. "And on his birthday, no less." I snapped the phone down onto the counter. "Oh, and let's not forget the iPhone you bought him. $1,200 on your birthday. What did he get you?" "A $200 gift card," David added. "And when his father had that health scare last year, who went to the hospital with a $1,500 gift?" "Us." My hands balled into fists. "But now he wants to send you an invoice for coffees and Uber rides?" The audacity. And to make it even worse, the email ended with a thinly veiled threat. "If you don't pay up, I'll have no choice but to come to your workplace and settle this in person." The moment I read that last line, a sharp cold settled into my chest. It wasn't just ridiculous anymore. It was hostile. It was harassment. David stood up so abruptly his chair screeched against the tile. "Oh no. Oh no, no. He is not dragging this filth into her workplace. Not a chance." Emily let out a humorless laugh, brittle at the edges. "He's serious. He actually thinks this is a legitimate debt." I squeezed her hand firmly. "Don't worry. If he so much as steps near your office, we'll handle it, legally, completely." But I didn't expect what happened next. The very next morning, I got a text from Emily, just one line. "They showed up." My stomach dropped. I didn't even need to ask who they were. I grabbed my keys and raced toward her office building in downtown Seattle, a 15-minute drive that felt like 15 years. When I pulled up, I knew I wasn't imagining it. There was a crowd, employees gathered near the glass entrance, whispering, peeking, some filming discreetly with their phones. Right in the middle of it, Jason, Mr. Carter, and Mrs. Carter. But it wasn't Jason causing the scene. Oh, he was tucked back against the wall, head down, trying desperately to shrink into nothingness. It was his parents. Mrs. Carter's voice screeched over the murmurs, cutting through like a siren. "I want to speak to your supervisor. We're here to collect a debt from your employee, Emily Dawson. She owes my son nearly $3,000. Mr. Carter was holding a poster board. A poster board. A massive white sign scrawled in black marker with messy, all-caps letters. "Real-life gold digger. Owes my son $2,097.36. Refuses to pay." I felt my blood pressure skyrocket. People were staring, whispering. Phones were out. Some employees gasped. Others traded looks of horror, or worse, amusement. Then the elevator dinged. Emily stepped out. She froze mid-step when she saw the scene, but only for a heartbeat. Her chin lifted, her shoulders squared. I was proud of her in that moment, watching her summon every shred of grace she had left. Miss Carter caught sight of her instantly, and pointed with such venom I half expected lightning to shoot from her fingertip. There she is! This woman dated my son for a year, used him, spent all his money, and now refuses to pay him back. The murmuring from the crowd turned louder. A few voices bubbled up. Wait, is that true? I thought her dad was some big-shot executive. Wow, what if it's all fake? Emily's entire face turned scarlet and her shoulders began to tremble, not with shame. No, with rage, with humiliation, with disbelief that they would dare humiliate her like this in her own workplace. I stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on her back. I've got this. And instantly, just like that, the Carters faltered. Mrs. Carter stiffened, visibly recalling the memory of David's fist slamming into her husband's face. Mr. Carter actually took a step back, lowering the poster slightly. But Mrs. Carter, stubborn as mold, straightened her back and sneered. We're not leaving until we get what's owed. 2,800. Oh, enough, I snapped, cutting her off. If you're going to humiliate yourselves in public, let's make sure everyone understands exactly what you're demanding. I glanced at the crowd, making my voice sharp, clear, and loud enough to carry across the entire lobby. How much is it again? Mrs. Carter blinked. 2,996, she spat. For a second there was dead silence. Then someone laughed, a soft snort at first, then a chuckle, and then it spread. A wave of laughter rolled through the watching employees. Wait, hold on, someone whispered loudly. All this for less than $3,000? Is she serious? Did she really say 36 cents? People were pulling out their phones now, recording openly. Mrs. Carter's eyes darted wildly, her composure faltering. Mr. Carter's grip on the poster trembled. But the ridiculous spectacle wasn't finished yet. Mr. Carter stepped forward, holding the poster high like some deranged auctioneer. We have a full breakdown, he bellowed. Every coffee, every meal, every Uber ride. Then he actually began reading it. Out loud. February 9th, 2 Starbucks lattes. February 14th. Valentine's flowers, $20. March 3rd. Shared dinner, $47. 50, half of which was her responsibility. The more he read, the worse it became. Is this real? Someone laughed. Did they seriously itemize coffee? Oh my God, this is insane. This isn't budgeting, this is psychotic. Jason muttered something under his breath, voice cracking. I only kept track for financial planning. It wasn't supposed to. It's not petty. That just made things worse. The laughter doubled. A few people clapped their hands over their mouths in disbelief. I knew then. I had them. I had them. I slowly pulled out my checkbook. Deliberate. Calm. Letting everyone see it. All right, I said sweetly. If you want your precious $2,897.36, let's do this properly. The room went dead silent. With precise, careful strokes, I wrote out a check for $3,000. Then, with a flick of my wrist, I tossed it. The check fluttered in the air like a paper bird, landing directly at Jason's feet. There, I said, my voice loud and razor-sharp, paid in full. Miss Carter gasped, snatching it up. For half a second, I saw it, the look of triumph blooming in her eyes, until I smiled. Now, I continued, turning toward Jason. Since we're settling debts, let's talk about what you owe Emily. Jason went rigid. His mouth dropped open. Oh yes, I went on, my voice slicing the air. For your birthday, Emily bought you a brand new iPhone, $1,200. When your father had a health scare, my husband personally brought a $1,500 gift. I have the receipts right here. I tapped my phone. The screen lit up, shining with evidence. And that, I said, meeting the eyes of the growing crowd, is already more than the pitiful amount you demanded from her. And that doesn't even include all the dinners, the gas money, or every time she picked up the tab because you forgot your wallet. A voice from the crowd chimed in, loud. Gleeful. Yeah, Jason. Shouldn't you be paying her? The wave of laughter that followed was deafening. The laughter kept rolling, rippling through the crowd like a wave cresting higher and higher. The Carters shrank beneath it. Miss Carter's face blazed crimson, but her mouth floundered, open and closing like a fish gasping for air. Mr. Carter gripped the poster board like a life raft, his knuckles turning white. "You're making this up," Mrs. Carter shrieked finally, her voice splintering under the weight of humiliation. "This is slander. Lies." I let out a cold, sharp laugh. "Oh? You want to talk about lies? Perfect. Let's take this outside. Or better yet." I turned, sweeping my gaze toward the glass office doors behind me. "How about we head upstairs and have this conversation with the partners at Summit Consulting Group? Let's show them this little spreadsheet of yours." Mrs. Carter paled. Her bravado cracked like glass under a hammer. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. Emily, who had stayed eerily silent until now, stepped forward. Her voice was clear, strong, and steady. "Or," she said, narrowing her eyes at Jason, "we can take this over to your company. I'm sure your manager would love to hear how you handle your personal relationships." Jason froze, completely. All color drained from his face. "What? No. Don't, Emily, don't do that. Don't drag me into this," he stammered, his hands flailing helplessly. This isn't professional." Emily's arms crossed, her stance solid as stone. "Neither is stalking me at my workplace. Neither is bringing your parents to publicly harass me." She leaned forward, her gaze sharp as needles. "You don't get to decide what's professional anymore." Mrs. Carter lunged suddenly, her hand flying up, aiming straight for Emily's face. A slap. Her palm sliced the air. I was ready this time. Before her hand even reached halfway, I stepped in front of Emily. My voice was quiet but deadly. "Put that hand down. And God help me." Mrs. Carter froze mid-swing. Her arm trembled, hanging in the air as if caught in a magnetic field. For one breath, two, her fingers twitched. And then slowly, her hand dropped back to her side. The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the low hum of the lobby's air vents. I didn't blink. I didn't waver. I held her gaze like a predator watching prey that had finally realized it was cornered. Then I turned my attention to Jason. "You came here to embarrass my daughter. You thought you could drag her down, humiliate her, make her small. But look at you now." I stepped forward once more, crowding his space, until his back hit the wall. "You're the one reduced to this, desperate, petty, pitiful." Jason's eyes filled with panic. "Look, his voice broke. I just wanted what was fair." "Oh, fair," I snapped. "You want fair? Fine." I pulled out my phone, flicking quickly through my contacts. Then I held it up for him to see. "Either you take this check and disappear, right now, or I walk straight up to your company's HR department with every piece of evidence I have. The screenshots, the emails, the threats, everything. And believe me, they'll be very interested in knowing the kind of person you are." Jason's mouth opened and closed. His eyes darted to his parents, both of whom were visibly panicking now. Before anyone could move, the glass door slid open, and a well-dressed man in a navy blazer stepped out. A lanyard with a Summit badge hung around his neck. It was Emily's direct supervisor. His expression flickered between confusion and alarm as he took in the scene. The crowd, the shouting, the giant poster still trembling in Mr. Carter's hands. Can someone explain what's going on here?" he asked, glancing between Emily, me, and the flustered Carters. I stepped forward immediately, forcing calm into my voice. "Of course. I'd be happy to." I pulled out my phone and with a few taps opened Jason's email. "This man," I gestured to Jason, "sent my daughter an invoice demanding repayment for coffee, Uber rides, and Valentine's flowers. After she broke up with him." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. The supervisor's face went slack with disbelief. "Wait, what?" I handed him the phone. He scrolled. His eyebrows shot up, then drew together in a dark frown. "There's more," I added. After being blocked on all platforms, he showed up today with his parents to publicly harass her at her place of employment. The supervisor's eyes darkened, his jaw tightened. He turned his gaze slowly, deliberately toward Jason. Jason immediately began stammering, hands flailing. I didn't mean for it to escalate like this. I was just trying to… To what? The supervisor cut him off sharply. Extort your ex-girlfriend? 'Cause a public disturbance? Humiliate yourself. Jason shrank back, his face practically gray. This is completely inappropriate. The supervisor continued, his tone hard now. Not only is this harassment, but you've also damaged the image of your own company by staging this circus in someone else's lobby. Rest assured, this is being reported directly to HR. Mrs. Carter's mouth flapped open. Wait, you can't talk to him like that. He's your employee. Oh, I can, the supervisor said coldly, and I will. Jason's hands trembled, fingers clutching desperately at the check in Mrs. Carter's grip. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. The supervisor shook his head. Pack your things. Go home. You'll be hearing from HR. Jason, visibly deflated. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I folded my arms, my smile razor sharp. Well, I think that about settles it. I turned to Emily, offering her my arm. Shall we? She nodded, chin lifted high, slipping her hand into mine. As we turned toward the elevator, Mrs. Carter's voice screeched one last time, scraping like nails against glass. This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't over. I didn't even turn back. I just called over my shoulder, calm and cool. Oh yes, it is. The elevator doors slid shut, silencing the chaos behind us. For the first time in months, as we rode up together, I felt it. Something clean, something fresh. Freedom. For a few weeks after that humiliating fiasco, it felt like life finally began settling back into place. Emily seemed lighter. Her footsteps no longer carried that heavy tension. Her eyes weren't shadowed with dread. She poured herself back into work, caught up with friends, even started picking up weekend yoga classes again. David and I had an unspoken rule between us. We didn't mention Jason, not his parents, not the disaster they had left behind, not the crumpled check they had scuttled away with. We weren't about to reopen wounds that were still tender, still raw. Emily seemed to be healing. She smiled more, laughed more. She was herself again. Or so we thought. That evening when she walked through the front door with a takeout bag in one hand, something was off. Her face wasn't sad. No, it was something colder, sharper. Her jaw was set, her eyes focused in a way that immediately put me on alert. I set the table, glanced at her casually. Work okay? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse and wordlessly handed me her phone. My stomach twisted before I even unlocked the screen. A text message. From an unknown number. But the words were unmistakable. Emily, I've been thinking. I know I messed up. I shouldn't have listened to my parents. I should never have taken my frustrations out on you. I have nothing left now. You were my only light. Please, let's start over. Give me another chance. I exhaled slowly, lowering the phone. This is… what, the third one? Emily nodded stiffly. Third this week. No replies. Good, I said firmly. Silence is the clearest answer. She let out a shaky sigh, slumping into a dining chair. I don't get it. Is he actually sorry? Or does he just hate losing? I didn't hesitate. Both. He doesn't regret what he did. He regrets that you walked away. Her fingers tapped absently against the table, her gaze drifting toward the window where the city lights flickered in the distance. I know you're right. It's just… exhausting. My hand reached across the table, squeezing hers. His growth isn't your responsibility, sweetheart. His emptiness, his failure to change, that's not your weight to carry. She nodded, quiet, but didn't answer. Her fingers stayed wrapped around mine for a long moment, gripping just a little tighter than usual. And for a while, it seemed that was the end. Until it wasn't. Just a few days later, the air shifted again. That evening, Emily walked in with a different kind of expression. Not sadness, not fatigue. Something colder, something calculating. She set her phone on the counter, her shoulders squared. "Mom," she said, voice flat but laced with ice. "Look at this." I picked it up and my breath hitched. A social media post. Anonymous, but clearly orchestrated. A blurry photo of Emily cropped beside Jason, paired with a stitched-together, heavily edited video clip. One that twisted a private conversation into a misleading narrative. The caption? "Real-life gold digger. Extorted her ex after the breakup. Bragged about her rich dad. Guess she's not so untouchable now, huh?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. A slow, simmering rage spread through my chest, up my spine, into my jaw, until my teeth clenched tight enough to ache. I gripped the phone, so hard it trembled. "Do we even need to guess who did this?" Emily shook her head, her lips a thin line. "It's anonymous, but look at the screenshots. The photos. Every single one of them came from Jason. He cropped himself out, hid behind a fake account. But I know. We both know." I closed my eyes for a long second, breathing slowly. So now it's character assassination. This isn't desperation anymore. This is pure spite. She sighed, pressing her palms against the counter as if holding herself up. "I just wanted to move on. I left quietly. I didn't retaliate. I didn't expose him. I blocked him. And yet, here we are." My hand found hers again. "Because he's not stuck on you. He's stuck on his own ego, his own failure. The only way he knows how to survive is by dragging you backward." She didn't reply. Her thumb absently traced the rim of her coffee mug, eyes flickering with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. I didn't waste a second. That very night, I dialed an old friend, a former classmate from law school, now a partner at one of the top litigation firms in the city. By sunrise the next day, a formal legal notice had been drafted and sent. It demanded the immediate removal of the defamatory content. It also included a subpoena request for the platform to preserve IP logs and account details in preparation for a potential civil lawsuit. But that wasn't all. We also filed a civil harassment report, making sure there was now an official record of Jason's behavior. No more whispering in the shadows. No more pretending this was harmless. For a moment, things quieted. The posts vanished. The anonymous account disappeared. But Jason wasn't done. Not even close. A week later, a package arrived at Emily's apartment. Inside was a handwritten letter. At first glance, it was dripping with regret, nostalgia, self-blame, a desperate revisiting of every memory they'd ever shared. "I still remember the first time I saw you, the way you smiled. I still think about the nights you stayed with me when my dad was sick. No one has ever cared for me like you did. I lost the best thing I ever had." But the last paragraph? That was the truth. "I can't accept you walking away completely. You were my only light. If you don't come back, I don't know what I might do." I felt the hairs on my arms rise. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't closure. It was emotional blackmail. Emily's hands trembled as she read it. Her face was pale but her eyes were set. Focused. This isn't okay. This is a threat." I nodded. "We're done playing defense." Without hesitation, I called the lawyer again. By that afternoon, the paperwork was filed. A restraining order. Immediate. Temporary for now, but legally binding. Jason was now prohibited from contacting, visiting, or approaching Emily in any form. That day, we drove to the courthouse together. Emily sat on a bench outside the clerk's office, gripping the letter so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Mom," she whispered, her voice tight, "I know I'm doing the right thing, but why does it still feel heavy?" I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Because healing is heavy. Protecting yourself is exhausting. But you're doing everything right. Everything." She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Then, when she opened them, they were clear. Steady. No tremble. No hesitation. "I won't let him hurt me again." A quiet smile broke across my face. "That's my girl." A few weeks later, the court officially approved the temporary restraining order. The document was crisp, the words printed in stark, cold clarity, legally binding, enforceable, undeniable. Jason was now prohibited from contacting Emily in any way, approaching her home, her workplace, or even sending a third party on his behalf. We didn't stop there. We provided the entire stack of evidence: emails, text messages, screenshots of the defamatory posts, and the threatening letter to the legal team at Summit Consulting Group. They documented everything, placing it on record in case Jason attempted any future interference that could affect Emily's personal or professional life. This time, we weren't waiting for an apology. We weren't waiting for him to beg or cry or spin some story about misunderstanding. We were done giving him chances. Emily was free, fully legally and emotionally severed from him. But something else had shifted, subtly, powerfully. She was no longer the girl who tiptoed around someone else's moods, whose first instinct was to compromise, to soften, to carry the emotional labor for two people. She had stepped fully into her own life, into her own strength, and as though the universe itself had been waiting for her to finally shed that dead weight, life began moving in a new direction. She poured herself into her career, not out of distraction but with purpose. Focused, driven, no longer hesitating, no longer dimming her own ambitions to make someone else feel bigger. She picked up projects that others were too timid to touch. She presented new proposals, tackled difficult negotiations, handled mergers with such precision that even the senior partners started paying attention in ways they never had before. It wasn't long before she was chosen to represent Summit Consulting Group at the Regional Business and Leadership Conference in the Rainier District, an event filled with executives, investors, and industry leaders. David and I watched her from the audience as she walked onto that stage, head held high, confidence radiating from her like a second skin. Her voice was steady, measured, and commanding, delivering a flawless presentation on strategic market growth and operational efficiency. By the time she finished, several executives were already lining up, business cards in hand, eager to discuss collaborations. That day, something shifted. A pivot point. The trajectory of her life quietly tilted towards something brighter, bigger, freer. At a networking luncheon following her presentation, Emily was introduced to Alexander Bennett, co-founder of Rainier Holdings, an MIT graduate, a third-generation member of a well-established San Francisco business family. But unlike others born into that kind of privilege, Alexander carried himself with a calm presence, measured, grounded, sincere, no arrogance, no smug charm, none of the posturing that men like Jason wore like armor. Their conversation wasn't anything dramatic, no sparks flying, no instant magnetic pull, just real, genuine, a quiet, natural exchange between two sharp minds who respected what the other brought to the table. They didn't exchange numbers, no flirtation, no veiled innuendo, just an insightful chat about sustainable investment models and the evolving needs of post-pandemic markets. The next week, Emily received something unexpected, not a text, not a call, a letter, handwritten, on elegant, cream stationery. It wasn't a love letter, not a grand, sweeping declaration. It was a thank you note, a simple, thoughtful message, expressing how much Alexander appreciated the clarity and depth of her presentation. He offered a few insights of his own, suggested a book on leadership he thought she might enjoy, and wished her continued success. David chuckled when he saw it. Well, at least this one didn't send you an invoice after the first meeting. Emily laughed, shaking her head. But I noticed there was something different in her smile, a softness, a curiosity. There was no rush between them, no whirlwind. They exchanged occasional messages, discussed market trends, forwarded each other articles, shared insights about the growing shifts in sustainable finance, then a coffee meeting, then another, small forums, industry panels. No pressure, no expectation, until one evening, after a late dinner following a business seminar, as Alexander pulled his car up to Emily's apartment, he suddenly put the gear into park, turned toward her and said, simply, "I don't know how you feel about me, but I want you to know something." His voice wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was just real, steady. "I like you, not because of your work, not because you're smart or successful, though you are, but because when I'm with you, It feels like life is something I actually want to experience fully, with you. Emily blinked, caught completely off guard. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. For a few long seconds, she just sat there, breathless, processing the sincerity, the absence of games, of manipulation, of contrinely. She managed, voice soft. I don't know what the future holds. I really don't. But I'd like to find out. Alexander smiled. That's all I hoped for. And for the first time in her life, she entered a relationship without fear, without pretending, without shrinking herself. No tiptoeing, no second guessing. When he introduced her to his parents, it was nothing like the nightmare she'd endured before. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet were gracious, poised and respectful. No interrogations, no power plays, no condescending glances, just warmth, curiosity, and quiet pride in the son who had chosen someone like Emily. Over dinner, Mrs. Bennet even brought out a small homemade dessert and smiled. This is the first time Alexander has ever invited someone home, she said, her tone light but affectionate. I wanted to make sure I got it just right. Later that evening, Mr. Bennet quietly pulled David aside. His words were simple but carried weight. She's remarkable, smart, poised. She knows her own mind. We're glad Alexander met someone like her. No entitlement, no demands, no suffocating expectations. It was everything Jason's family had never been, a family that valued partnership, mutual respect, a real foundation. For the first time, Emily was safe. She was cherished. She was home. Good things rarely go unnoticed for long. A few months into Emily and Alexander's growing relationship, a candid photo surfaced online, a shot of the two of them standing side by side at a charity gala, both dressed in elegant evening wear, laughing at something just outside the frame. They looked effortless together, comfortable, happy. But of course that photo traveled, in the small interconnected world of industry circles, and among those who always seemed to have a little too much time to gossip, it made its way to the one person we all wished it hadn't, Jason. That evening as Emily left her office building, her heels clicking against the concrete as the sunset painted the city in deep gold and purple, a figure stepped out from behind a parked car. She stopped mid-step, her stomach clenched. Jason, his face was pale, thinner than before, his posture hunched, as though weighed down by something far heavier than the messenger bag slung across his shoulder. His eyes, once lazy with entitlement, were now sharp with something else, something ugly. So this is it, he said, his voice low, bitter. You dumped me, and ran straight into another man's arms. Emily didn't flinch, she didn't even blink. Jason, walk away, you have no right to talk to me. He took a step closer, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. You were planning this all along, weren't you? His voice cracked. Were you already seeing him when you were with me? Her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping into steel. You need to leave. Right now. I have a restraining order. You know this. If you're following me, I'll call the police. His fists clenched, knuckles whitening, his face contorted with something halfway between anger and grief, like someone trying to hold back a scream that wouldn't come. And then, from the shadows of the parking lot, a second figure appeared. Alexander. He stepped forward, posture calm, movement smooth but deliberate, placing himself silently between Jason and Emily. His presence changed the air entirely. No aggression, no bluster, but his stillness was a warning in itself. I don't know who you are, Alexander said, his voice even, but edged with quiet steel. But if you take one more step toward her, I will call the police myself. Jason blinked, startled, like he hadn't realized anyone else was there. His bravado faltered instantly. You're the new boyfriend, he spat. But even as the words left his mouth, the venom was laced with something weaker, a crack in the facade. You think you're better than me? Alexander didn't take the bait. His gaze didn't waver. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you understand something very clearly. Emily is no longer someone you get to hurt. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. He stared at the ground, shoulders rising and falling in rapid, shallow breath. For a split second, I wondered if he was about to lash out or collapse. But when he looked up, the storm was gone, replaced by something hollow, something worse, defeat. For the first time, he truly saw it. The truth that had been circling him like vultures for months. The woman he once tried to control, belittle, diminish, was now standing in a world he could never touch. A world of light, of strength, of dignity. A world he no longer had the right to stand in. He didn't belong next to her, not anymore. Jason's eyes flicked toward Alexander, then to Emily. His lips trembled, but no words came. And then, he turned. No tantrum, no screams, no last-ditch insults, just silence. He walked away. Emily didn't watch him leave. She didn't need to. Alexander turned to her, his hand gently brushing hers. "You okay?" She nodded, a deep, steady breath flowing out of her lungs. "I am now." They walked to the car, side by side, without looking back. Later that evening, Emily and I walked together along the narrow gravel path that curved around the little lake near our house. The air was cool, crisp with the gentle breeze that made the surface of the water ripple like silk. This had always been one of our spots since she was little. I remembered her as a child, hopping from stone to stone by the water's edge, always daring herself to leap just a little farther, making my heart leap right along with her. Now her steps were steady, measured, her gaze clear, sharp as the stars beginning to pierce the twilight. "Do you remember," she asked suddenly, "how I used to run into the water to collect stones?" I smiled softly. "Of course. You always said each one was special, that you had to bring them home and wash them properly." She chuckled, but it was tinged with something reflective. "Back then, I thought every little thing was worth holding on to." Her hands slid into her jacket pockets. Her gaze stayed out over the water, watching as two ducks floated lazily by. "And now?" I asked gently. She was quiet for a moment. "Then, now I know. Some things aren't meant to be carried. Some things are meant to be left where they are. You don't have to drag every stone home to remember it." I turned to her, my heart swelling, not with worry, not with sadness, but with pride. Pure, fierce pride. She wasn't the little girl trying to balance on shaky stones anymore. She was the woman who could look at the water, at the past, at herself, and decide which things were worth holding, and which were not. "Mom," she asked softly, "what do you think people spend their whole lives chasing?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let my gaze drift out over the lake, watching the soft ripples that glowed faintly gold in the fading light. "I think it's different for everyone," I finally said. "Some chase happiness, some chase love, some chase security, or status, or excitement." I turned toward her, my voice soft but steady. "But for me, it's peace." She raised an eyebrow, a little smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Not happiness?" I shook my head. "Happiness can be fleeting. Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's just other people's expectations disguised as joy. But peace is something you build. It's something you choose. Something that stays." She was quiet for a long moment, letting my words settle like stones dropped into the water. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I used to think I needed to be loved by someone else to feel like my life had meaning." Her eyes turned to me steady, clear, unwavering. "But now, I know, learning to love myself is enough." I nodded. "It's more than enough." She smiled then, really smiled. And for the first time, I saw it unburdened, unafraid, untethered from every old version of herself that once believed she had to shrink in order to be worthy of someone else's love. "You always knew this, didn't you?" she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just held her gaze and she knew. We kept walking, side by side, our feet crunching softly against the gravel. The world around us was quiet except for the gentle rustle of wind through trees and the soft lapping of water at the shore. She didn't need me to guide her anymore. But still, she reached out and wrapped her fingers around mine. And that was enough. I often wonder if Emily realizes just how much she's changed, not just on the outside, not in her career, her relationships, or the way the world now looks at her, but inside, where it matters most. Because the girl she used to be, the one who smiled through disrespect, who bent herself into smaller and smaller shapes just to fit into someone else's expectations, that girl doesn't exist anymore. And thank God for that. She no longer lives in the shadow of what others wanted her to be, no longer feels the need to explain herself, justify herself, or ask for permission to exist fully boldly as she is. She had been through fire, and she came out for. I watched her step into her life like someone who had been waiting for the key all along, only to realize the door had never actually been locked. Her career soared. After the conference, Emily began receiving offers, consultations, speaking engagement, even an invitation to contribute as a guest columnist for a leading business publication. She was no longer seen as simply promising. She was seen as a leader. Alexander stood at her side, not as someone trying to overshadow her, nor as someone who expected her to dim her light for his comfort, but as an equal, a partner. Their relationship grew quietly, without spectacle, without chaos. It was all the things her past had never given her. Steady, safe, nourishing. It was over dinner one evening, just a simple meal at home, that Alexander reached across the table, took her hand, and said in that calm, steady way of his, "You know, I always thought I'd end up with someone impressive, smart, capable, but you've completely ruined my expectation." Emily blinked. Wait, ruined? In the best way possible. He smiled, squeezing her hand. Because it turns out, I didn't need someone impressive. I needed someone who made me feel like home. And for the first time, she didn't second guess. She didn't wonder if she was too much, or not enough. She didn't brace for disappointment, waiting for the inevitable cracks to show. She simply smiled. Soft. Sure. Same, she whispered. And she meant it. She knew the difference now, the enormous, life-defining difference between someone who loves you for what you give them, and someone who loves you for who you are. Months later, we found ourselves back at that same little lake, the one where Emily used to play as a child. This time it was David who suggested it. He had packed a small picnic, and the three of us sat there together, watching the breeze ripple over the water, the trees dancing in the distance. David leaned back, hands folded behind his head. "You know," he mused, "I think I finally understand what satisfaction really feels like." Emily smiled, tilting her head. "Oh? What's that?" He glanced at her, his expression soft. "Watching you become someone who doesn't need us anymore, but still chooses to come home." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. That's because home isn't where you need help. It's where you're safe to not need it. I felt a lump rise in my throat but swallowed it down with a laugh. That's a pretty profound statement for someone who still doesn't know how to pair socks correctly. David chuckled, tossing a pebble into the lake. "That's why I married someone smarter than me." Emily laughed. A real deep laugh, the kind that echoed over the water. She stood, brushing crumbs off her jeans, and walked to the edge of the dock. Her arms folded loosely as she gazed out over the lake, the same way she used to when she was a teenager, staring out as if the water held answers. And maybe it did. She spoke without turning around. "You know, sometimes I think about the girl I used to be." Her voice was steady, reflective, the one who thought that love meant sacrifice, that being easy to love meant being easy to control, that keeping someone meant shrinking, dimming, then. She turned then, her gaze meeting mine. And yeah, it hurts to remember her, but more than anything, I feel grateful. I stood, joining her at the water's edge, grateful for walking away, for choosing myself, for every lesson that nearly broke me but didn't. She exhaled, watching the sunlight skip across the ripples. "I finally understand," she continued, "that a real relationship isn't about fixing someone or waiting for someone to become what you hoped they'd be. It's about standing next to someone who already sees you, who already respects you, And who doesn't ask you to set yourself on fire just to keep them warm? Her fingers slid into mine, the way they used to when she was small. But this time, it wasn't for safety. It wasn't for reassurance. It was just connection. A choice. We stood like that for a long time, quiet, peaceful. The wind rustled the leaves, a bird skimmed the surface of the water, wings stretched wide. Somewhere in the distance, a pair of ducks called out to each other. And then Emily whispered something, so soft I barely heard it. I bowed to no one, my heart clenched. Not with sorrow, not with fear, but with something fierce, something bright. Pride. Good, I said, squeezing her hand. Never again. We stayed there as the sun dipped lower, casting the world in hues of gold and soft lavender, watching the water, watching the light. And as the day slipped quietly into evening, I realized something. This was the ending we were meant to have. Not the fairy tale, not the flawless story, but the real one, the strong one, the one where the girl doesn't get rescued. She rescues herself and lives better, freer, unapologetically, herself, always. This story is a powerful reminder that self-worth should never be sacrificed for anyone. Not for love, not for acceptance, certainly not for people who only see your value when it benefits them. Emily's journey teaches us that walking away from people who exploit, manipulate, or belittle you isn't failure, it's strength. She learned to stop shrinking herself to fit someone else's expectations and stepped fully into a life where she was respected, valued, and loved for who she truly is. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close a door, not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. If this story inspired you, if it stirred something deep in your heart, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to support this channel. I'll be sharing more real-life stories of resilience, empowerment, and transformation, just like this one. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful narratives to life. And before you go, I'd love to know which country or region are you watching from. Drop it in the comments below so we can see how far this message of strength and self-love is reaching.